So these guys are up on screen. It looks like a Tangent 90 event. It's not. It's a Pharma MCM meetup where we ask people to come along and present things that I find interesting, things that you find interesting. So if you've got any ideas, bring them forward. We'll get them up on stage. But I was exposed to this product and I thought it was excellent. I wanted these guys in. I asked if they would do a talk and they ran away with the agenda and have got a really interesting one put together. They're going to do both talks, but they're not talks, they're discussions. So I'm really grateful to them for taking this on. So what I should say is if it's awful, it's all their fault. If it's great, it was my idea to bring them in. The other thing to say about these meetups is that, as you know, they're free to come along. We get pizza and beer, and that's thanks to ourselves, 28B, but also Christine and Charlie and the team from Salamandra, and who's not here tonight, Nick from Wells Park. So what we're going to do is kick off, really. I'm not going to say very much more than this. I'm going to hand over to the guys from Tangent 90. But first, Salamander would like to show you their newest reel. And I hand over to Charlie to take through that.
Thanks very much, James. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you very much for coming. And thank you to Gilead who are hosting us. So Salamandra, we are a design and animation agency, as James said. We are co-hosting here this evening, and we're specialists in delivering complex messages visually. I'm working here as the sales director at Salamandra. And yeah, we just want to show you our latest showroom to give you a flavour of what we do and what we can achieve. So I'll just play that for you now. There we go. So it gives you a nice flavour, and as I say, we're here to chat. If you've got any particular news, we'll happily chat with you afterwards. So enjoy this evening, and hopefully all the talks go well.
Now I know I said I wasn't going to speak. Those of you that know me know that's really hard for me to do. But Charlie made me remind me of something, which is Gilead. I really should have said thank you, Terry. So for those of you know, WeWork used to give us a free venue. We used to be in Tower Bridge, and we've been there for a year. If you know what's happened with WeWork, you know that they can no longer afford to support free events. So that was our last event, was back at the end of last year, and I've been looking for a venue since then, and Terry stepped up and Gilead have stepped up, and they've given us a wonderful venue which I hope we will continue to use for these events and bring value both to the team and Gilead who can drop in and get free beer and pizza afterwards, but to everyone as well. So sorry, but thank you very much, Terry and Gilead.
Very good. Come join me at the front here. Should we stand? Should we sit? Let's stand. If you can't hear us at the back, that's fine. I'm going to stand for a minute and just intro a bit. So I'm Peter West from Tangent 90. James very kindly invited us to talk to you this evening. So thanks very much for that invite. And as you say, thanks for Gilead for this fun venue we have here in central London. Very good to see so many of you turn out, so thanks very much for coming out this evening. It's brilliant. So I'm aware of the fact that some of you probably have no idea who Tangent 90 is and Trust Track is, this, that, the other. So just really quickly talk why Tangent 90 is a company that's been around for about 10 years doing, we like to think, doing some clever stuff for digital marketing and pharmaceutical. And we've sold to quite a few of the bigger pharmaceutical companies and a few of the smaller ones. And our key product that we're talking about tonight is called Trust Track, which is, we're not so much even talking about Trust Track, but you kind of need to know that we have a platform which is an omni-channel digital platform. Really good science. That's really what we want to do. And Richard here helped to found a business a few years ago with me and another guy who couldn't be here this evening called Dominic. And really, kind of what we had in mind at the time was what we're trying to do is to get good science out to healthcare professionals. That's really what we're being nice to ourselves. That's what we try and think of. So that's what we're going to be talking about this evening. So the format is we're going to start off, I'm going to ask some questions of these two here, and hopefully I'm sure they'll give you some interesting answers, and then we'll have a little bit of a break, and Richard's then going to show you a little bit of a demo, which is to show how simple it is to be able to share some copyright content really about coronavirus, because that's the topic on everybody's mind. So a little bit of coronavirus is a little interval. Masks will be provided for everybody. And then after that, a couple more of our experts here will be asking some more questions too, and then I really want to open it up to the rest of you, because I'm really interested to know what you think about it, because when I think about science these days, particularly as used in the pharmaceutical industry, it's a challenge, isn't it? There are some challenges. Simon here's for the publishing industry, there's challenges for the publishing industry, there's challenges for the pharmaceutical industry, and there's a challenge for science itself, because nowadays in this sort of post-truth world, it's getting a bad name, isn't it? And we just need to be getting good science out there as best we can. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so let me just introduce you to these guys here. So Simon Fry, as I said, is product director at Springer Healthcare, which is the Medcoms and reprints arm of Springer Nature. Simon is, dare I say, one of the few people I know in publishing who's really kind of forward-thinking and a future apologist. So Simon's always got some interesting thoughts on science, which is fantastic. And Audrey Gent here is somebody who some of you will know from her time at Viva a few years ago, and since then Audrey has been doing some consulting for some enterprise pharma companies about multi-channel digital strategy, and we're really pleased to have her working with us at Tangent as well, helping our customers get that kind of maximum out of the Trust Track platform, doing customer success stuff for us, which is amazing. So, okay, that's enough of me, and so let's start off with you, Simon. So just give us, in a few minutes, where you see the trends at the moment in terms of where content's going, what people are using, what they're not, how they're going to use it from the publisher's perspective.
Yeah, thank you. So I think, in thinking about, because I knew Peter was going to ask me this question, I think what was really interesting from my perspective is someone who's been building technology to help publishers distribute their content in a meaningful way through pharma companies to clinicians was digital peaked in 2014. Now that's a kind of really weird thing to say, but I've been building these platforms for a long time thinking that somehow digital clinical articles were going to somehow take over the world, and for some bizarre reason that didn't happen. And in 2014 we had lots of customers say, that's it, we're getting rid of all of our paper and we're going to go 100% digital and we're all going to go forward and the world's going to be a beautiful place. And we were right on board with that. We had the technology and the partnerships to be able to do it. And that actually didn't end up materialising. And I think we spent a long time assessing this and really looking at this, and what we realised was that not only did we not really know what that product was for when pharma companies were trying to use it to engage with doctors, but our customers didn't really understand what it was for either. And I think one of the things that we've learned, and that we are very much masters of our own destiny now, is realising that you don't take something and make it digital just by basically putting it online or putting it into an app, whatever it is. Digital fundamentally changes your business model at the point at which your content, we as a content provider, touches the end user. And I think it's taken 4 or 5 years for that to really get worked out, and especially within the publishing industry. And it's kind of been sort of fairly stale and a little bit underwhelming and a bit disappointing for all of us who, all of us as technologists, see the real value that we can deliver. But I think that is now starting to change. And I think that was kind of indicated maybe towards the end of last year, where we see a lot of our competitors in the medcoms, med-ed world coming to us as publishers saying, we are going 100% digital, and when it's those kind of small, very marketing-focused agencies who really get what it means of how you use content to engage with doctors are asking that question, this is where we think that now the change is in the air. And I think that's certainly been manifest in terms of what you've been asked by some of the agencies you've worked with, particularly in Germany, where we've seen a lot of it. We're certainly hearing that a lot. And I think the other thing that's really a telling sign is we do a lot of work with publications managers, because we own journals and we get stuff published. And those publications managers for a long time, part of that whole sort of boring regulatory submissions world, you know, but now increasingly understanding that their content has a significant downstream impact on the whole of the marketing life cycle. Pub planners are coming to us and saying, how can I demonstrate my value to the organisation by creating the sort of content that gets seen? Recognising that if you look at the old metrics or something like that for a typical article, you know, maybe 20, 30 people viewed it, you know, these are very underwhelming statistics for that huge amount of effort that goes into that output. When those people are starting to ask us, how do I make sure my content gets seen? How do I make sure I'm delivering value to my organisation in terms of creating all this content? That's another big indicator, I think, that they're ready, because they're saying, how can we do video? How can we do things like infographics? So that is now starting to come through loud and clear. So that's why we're particularly excited.
Okay, fantastic. Audrey, so from your perspective and from your research and dealing with your clients, what changes are you seeing in your industry?
So I think a bit back to what Simon just said. So you didn't really give us the why. So why has that changed? And I think very strongly a lot of that is because actually farmers' customers changed. And I think that you know, there's the Pharma Forum stats, 70% of HCPs are now digital native. We've now hit 2020. You know, so that combined with the fact that they have an expectation, HCPs have an expectation for 24/7, always on, serve me the content I want to support my prescribing decisions and to support the questions I have. And I think naturally that falls to digital. That has to fall to digital. And I think the other thing, you know, only last week I was asked to provide some content to support somebody who's doing their op planning. A pharma company leads kind of a digital team, and they were saying, actually, I want stuff that supports the story I'm trying to tell is 24/7. You know, the fact that actually, where does the rep sit in that picture? What is the role of the marketeer in supporting that 360, you know, kind of view of whether that be through the rep visiting me, a remote call, whether that's them going to my website. I want to be able to know that that content is going to be served consistently across those channels. And I think that change in the customers, combined with a real push towards a need for data to substantiate that, so actually they're just starting to really look at the data and the metrics, is creating that behaviour change. Because they're actually starting to interrogate, you know, some of the things like content utilisation. Again, I had another great one. I was speaking with some guy who runs a part of the analytic team for cross brands for this commercial, this pharma company. He said, did you know? He said, our HCP portals in Europe, on average, 80% of the content is never even accessed. And again, I think they probably never even interrogated that to the extent they're doing. And now marketers are being made more accountable for that.
And why, you said, talked about the digital revolution happening a few years ago, and for most people, the digital revolution happened about 15 years ago. Why are we still having this conversation about it? I mean, this is the year of Greta now, isn't it? Why are people still asking for content on paper? Why is it that digital hasn't taken off from your views on it?
I think there is a huge part of it around the accessibility and the engagement that you can have simply by holding a piece of paper, because you've got an extraordinarily small window of opportunity to get hands-on information. But the reality of it is that, you know, we should be looking at every single way in which that doctor wants to be able to receive that content and how they want to consume it. So we should never be saying, yeah, it needs to be 100% digital. We need to make sure that we are servicing that need. Whatever walk of life they're from, whatever level of experience they've got, however it is that's most convenient for them to consume that content. that really needs to be the focus, and so that it's not a binary world as far as I'm concerned. It's a multi-channel world, and paper is part of that. One of the most interesting things about it is that, you know, if you look at the trend towards everything is about the data that you can generate about engagement, you know, and you know, that's obviously where the whole ad world is going, and there's a huge trend towards making sure that we're responsible application advertising technology, and that's just really interesting. I have this notion really that if data is going to become so valuable, it's almost more valuable than the actual engagement that you get at that point in time because of what you can go on to do with it. So now, if you can't generate data from your application of paper as part of the marketing process, it becomes even less valuable. So, you know, we still have a huge vested interest in print. We're looking at things like, you know, RFID tags so we can figure out when stuff's been opened, augmented reality so we can see if people are actually engaging in that content. There's a whole slew of cool things you can do there to liberate that. And it's about bringing bringing digital and paper together to service that customer's need and that clinician's need.
Anything you can add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think one of the things you talked about, the multi-channel approach, and it was about a year ago, and we were working with some Spanish physicians, and one of them actually said, I want paper, exactly to your point. And he said, if you don't give me paper, I won't read it. And then we went back and we had to do another session, and this was a young oncologist, and he said, the complete opposite. So, did you give me paper, I put it in the bin. He said, if you send it to me in an email from my rep, and the other thing that I think, and I didn't mention this before, but I've done that kind of ad boards where what comes through really strongly now, not just the change in the expectations of customers around digital, but also what they're going to be served. And pharma need to add value now. It's not about selling, and that value is around the science. So giving them ways to make decisions that is less focused on that warm products data and more about the science around that particular area. And I think, again, saying this thing, it's acknowledging that actually all customers need to be served differently and leveraging the data to support that personalisation and to support the need and also I think there's a huge amount in there around the trust that physicians will have if you serve them that right content, if you're serving the science, if you're serving it through the channels that they're asking for, that guy with his email, with the clinical paper in, then they're more likely to come back, they're more likely to have that kind of relationship with you as a pharma company.
But as you say, Simon, what stats, what analytics do you get back from a piece of paper? Again, if you've got digital, you've got consents, you've got analytics that you can record. So should you, as publishers, just be allowing everybody who downloads a digital copy to be able to print it themselves, if that's what they want? There's a lot of people, if they do want a printed copy to read, then would that make life easier?
Well, I think there's a number of different ways you can look at how that's being enabled. I mean, obviously we've got, as part of Spring and Nature, one of the sort of main proponents of the open access movement in terms of liberating science from registration wars and all that kind of stuff. And that's a really interesting dynamic because that is also showing us that, if you look at clinical paper and the real value that can be derived from it, I think Audrey mentioned the magic word there. It's about trust. That is why this content is so highly valued, and we see plenty of statistics independently generated that clinicians want access to clinical articles because 100% is about the trust and the impartiality of the evidence that's being presented. But of course, we're talking about extremely time-strapped individuals who don't necessarily have time to figure out what's being presented in a 13-page article, or maybe the abstract's not deep enough for them. So we're seeing lots of opportunities, and this is where digital really comes into its own, to be able to take those that format and add value to it through infographics, through actual meaningful interviews maybe with the author, not just the author reading out the abstract, which is just totally boring. Actually a bit of eye-opening engagement with that author and why they're so excited about the trial data that they're presenting. So there are plenty of things that we're seeing the demand increasing for, and we need to have that kind of digital ecosystem functioning really well in order to be able to create these complementary experiences that really allow a pharma company to present the idea that they're interested in the education of that clinician and not simply the delivery of a promotional message.
But the challenge there is exactly to your point, that is the best in class, that's where you want to get to. The reality is, they're not even looking at the basic data in a lot of cases, to be able to just make decisions like actually a 170 slide CLM presentation isn't going to work, let alone actually which page in my reprint is most used by this group of physicians, you know, which is what the panel shows. But you know, you're actually then feeding into personas, you're looking at actually how you can target much more specifically individual customers, leverage things like your CRM to personalise those interactions with the content. And you know, you're still stuck at the point where you're like, oh, actually, I didn't even realise that, you know, specialists were using that content.
Yeah.
You know, because we're not even looking at that data. We're just focused on our next cycle, and we're just churning out some more stuff for our email solution or for our HCP portal. So the fundamental is about kind of that, to that point, getting that to become a behaviour change, to looking at the data, getting excited by the data almost, and what they can learn from that to support a marketeer's critical success factors for the brand and feed into their ongoing strategy for the brand and for the different groups that brand supports. So, yeah, no small task.
I think it is a huge opportunity. I think this year could be. I'm kind of quite excited. Obviously, you know, we've got the big US election. We may reach peak disinformation and misinformation issues. You know, in many ways it's going to be quite entertaining and terrifying at the same time. And you know, we're you know, I think naive to you know, not think that all of our content and the things that we're trying to get across don't exist and compete in that world of all of the nonsense that's being published and clamouring for people's attention through social media channels and all that kind of stuff. So we have to fight to be heard in this ecosystem. Doctors have gotten no time and an overwhelming amount of content that they've got to somehow wade through to figure out what's best for me, for my patients, for my business, or however it is that they've got themselves structured. And I think they want partners in that process. And there is, I think certainly from the evidence I see, that there is a notion that pharma company, there is an expectation that pharma companies can be a trusted partner in this process if it's done well. So there is a huge opportunity for us to be helping that process as opposed to exacerbating the problem by creating more content that doesn't add value.
So, what does the evidence show there? What ways people actually want that kind of content served up to them? What are people going to listen to?
The customers. So and I think it's hugely different. So I think you will get groups of physicians that do want to engage with pharma, and they do still get huge value from the relationships that they might have with the reps, and when it's done well, the rep can orchestrate so much in terms of even the non-rep-led channels. So whether that's about, like you said, having those libraries of, I did a rep ad board, which again actually consolidated a lot of the insight from the physicians world, where they kind of said, actually, you know, the product I work with supports primary care, but also a lot of different types of secondary care would use that product. I want a content library that they can go to and access the paper that's most relevant to them based on where they sit. You know, so some of it is about serving, it is specific to the product, to the brand, to the disease area, to the kind of the demographic of the customers that we have. But it's also about, again, it goes back to this data and understanding the preferences of the customer and making the content easy to access, you know, so that it isn't something that you're making them work for. Exactly to your point, you know, this came across really strongly when we were speaking with the UK physicians, admittedly, but they were kind of saying, actually, yes, partner with us, but give us the easiest way to access what it is we're looking for. Otherwise, we're going to go elsewhere, we're going to go to UpToDate, we're going to go to, you know, all the other Univartis, we're going to go to Medscape, we're not going to use pharma's services because to me you're selling and it's all about your brand. Yeah. So it's a fine balance, isn't it, I think, in that particular perspective. Because, you know, so I was reading, I thought it was very interesting, it said 64% of physicians will go online to access medical blueprints weekly. Right? In Europe, this was like the DRG Europe stat. And then it said, however, but that is not pharma websites. It said that 40% of those would agree that they would be happy to access that from pharma. So the desire is there, provided that there is a consistent experience as well. So that it isn't a kind of, actually, I'm going to this brand and I get one experience, I go to another brand and it's different. Or actually, you're not serving it to me following a rep visit, for example. So it's about really supporting their needs across the journey, and marketeers working with the data to evolve that as they get the insight from the field. Because again, that's the whole value of tools like Viva, like Acuvia, that just they provision that data to be able to help them make those decisions.
And so it's about making it easy, as easy as possible, just to click straight through. So it's about, and why do we still sometimes see footnotes on digital documents without click-through? What's that about? Surely in a digital document, I mean, because nowadays, that's what when I was in school, we had footnotes. Nowadays in digital documents, you click straight through.
Well, I think that's a big part of what we were talking before about, the way that the whole process of pump planning and that actual document, what it's for, what it does well. It's born out of like a regulatory submission process, if anything from the farm world, having grown out of academia. So it hasn't moved on, and there's lots of opportunities to kind of fix those problems to make it a much better means of gaining access to important educational content. So there's our opportunity. Dovetail, I think, with exactly what Audrey was saying there. Go back to your point. There's no point just making it all free and available because there's just too much of it. It's about a partnership in understanding how to curate it in responsible ways to deliver a meaningful message, and that means planners and marketeers working together, potentially.
And sales, into this sales, yeah.
And is this going to be marketeers? What's the solution for marketeers?
Yeah, I mean, done right, if that collaboration is there, so from that perspective, but also with the field, so in terms of supporting them and interpreting some of that data, what we're ultimately looking for is prescribing to an extent, but also, the impact that has on patients, and that's what, that's the end game. And if you are better supporting the needs of customers, if you are personalising the content you serve to them, then that should hit all of those things. That should hit both in terms of the centricity, the content, but also in terms of, you would hope, in terms of the RX as well. And then also the other thing actually with that is that there's also the peer-to-peer piece in there. So if you have that one customer that feels that way, that one HCP is your brand champion, then they become a champion within their peers, their peer group for that brand as well, which is the most influential channel you can have.
Very good. Any questions from the audience to these guys?
Okay, so I've got some context here. I'm not sure if this came across or not, but could we just define what we're talking about in terms of the scientific evidence? So you see an interesting DRG stat around, I think it's 40% of doctors would be willing to access material on a pharma website, but maybe it's not currently available, whereas I think our experience is way lower than that, but then I'm from the commercial brand end of things, where we've dressed that data up, we've given it a shine, we've done all the rest of it, and then there's a footnote that references the clinical paper that we're talking about. So the discussion we've been having here is more focused on that copyrighted original source.
Yes.
And it's when you're talking about that original source that, my God, if we could get 40% of doctors willing to come to our websites for it, and that's the difference for me, is that we sometimes, either just because we can't access that, or because we like to dress it up, give it a shine and colour it in, we lose those doctors because they feel like it's been manipulated to a degree. Forgive all marketeers here, but that's how it is, because it's way less than 40% once you dress it up.
Yeah.
Is that correct? I was on that.
100%.
Okay.
And there's a variety of stats produced by non-publishers, medcoms agencies that have asked doctors what are their most valued content sources. Peer-reviewed publications comes out as #1 pretty much every time, but we are somehow failing to deliver that in the way that makes it useful for those clinicians.
But it kind of used to be, because you had your pilot's bag, I used to carry, and I'd have 15 or 20 reprints in there, and I'd save them for my favourite doctors, going on 15 to 20 a quarter, a month, whatever it is, and I'd give that out. But with digital, we have that opportunity to have more, and also, like we talked right at the beginning, track what's happening. So I don't think we're going to put our tags in, or I'll take a try.
I'm working on that.
But yeah, so just want to clarify that.
That's very, very good point, very valid point.
Question correct.
Hi, thanks for your talk. So I'm working in the distributed ledger technology space, and I've spoken to a few companies who are involved in producing products for pharmaceutical companies and for doctors. One of the problems which they've identified is that doctors are spending way too much time doing admin tasks and not looking after the patients, which is one of the kind of things being freelance, I suppose. But there's a company called True, which has developed a solution for enabling doctors to carry their digital identity when they go to different organisations. So, for example, like people who have police checks and have to move, if they want to go somewhere else, they have to get a police check done for every organisation they go to, which is silly. But this organisation, True, is doing this digital identity for doctors, which enables them to move around a lot more fluidly. Do you think that blockchain, DLT, whatever it is, going to transform the medical industry, and how long is it going to take, and what are your thoughts on it?
I can give you my opinion from the clinical reprint side of things. You know, we have got this huge challenge of, you know, the costs associated with bringing that content from publishers, you know, paying licenses. Combine that with the challenge of, from a regulatory authority perspective, you know, thinking specifically about the Sunshine Act in the US, where pharma companies are obliged to declare the value of that as an educational gift. There's a huge opportunity to leverage blockchain to make that process more, well, I guess less complex and more even-handed, in terms of you could, for instance, pre-allocate an entire audience with the rights to be able to view that content, and then should they choose to redeem it, all of that activity then being visible on the blockchain, which means it's then the public visibility, transparency, and that sort of stuff. So there's some really exciting ideas there. In fact, our very own Richard Lucas here, the guy in front of you who's from Tangent 90, has got some really great ideas for the technology stack in that space, so I would definitely grab him for a conversation on that.
And very quickly, just about authenticating doctors. It's a big challenge in the pharmaceutical market, authenticating doctors. And you know, companies like Uber have been addressing that with their databases like Open Data, and you see that with other companies. But it is a real challenge to kind of authenticate someone as a healthcare professional in every country. But the problem is you've got to deal with all those different health systems and all those different ways of crediting doctors. So then you've got the whole problem of actually physically validating this person is a doctor. So we can have a long chat about it afterwards.
The flip side of that, though, is we're always faced with that challenge of identifying who's visited the site, bringing that back in terms of data on the channel, multi-channel, we're going to call it. And we have several projects on the go right now, which is how the hell do we know who these people are, and how valuable is our content. The other thing to talk about in my is the more valuable the content, the more likely someone's going to give up their identity to download.
But the beauty of blockchain is it does allow you to get the right level of anonymity where appropriate, and personalisation where actually requested or desired by the end user. That's really one of the sort of enablers of blockchain.
Do you know if the company you're talking about is that blockchain based?
True, yeah. They're working with a digital identity provider called Evonym. I think so, yeah.
It is, maybe it's a slightly thing off topic, but I completely agree with you. I mean, if you look at some of the restrictions placed on Google DeepMind in terms of having access to, they had this project in ophthalmology, and essentially the UK privacy lobby shut that whole program down, because they were quite rightly obviously interested in privacy abuses, but that means that we lose this amazing technology figuring out how to solve problems like macular degeneration. We've got to sort that problem out, because we all give our information to Facebook, and none of us really give a monkeys about it, by and large. But when it comes down to some genuinely useful application of this stuff, suddenly we get all kind of antsy about it. What the hell's going on? So blockchain is I think, is critical for helping solve that challenge.
I think sometimes it's simpler than we imagine. It's just, and it's already been done in a consumer space. It's already been done in healthcare in a lot of senses. If you look at it from the customer perspective, you look at how you can access most websites through your Google account. You can pay by PayPal, you can pay by Amazon Pay. From a customer point of view, that's fantastic, because you just click on a button, you pay for your stuff straight away. And the end website, you get some data on you, but it's anonymized, they don't own all of that data. Yeah. From a pharmaceutical point of view, every company creates its own ecosystem. Every company currently in the process of building out its authentication database. All of its websites can authenticate their users. There's a lot of pharma companies. And already you've got people like DocCheck in Germany. They'll plug that app straight into your website. So if your goal is to enable doctors to use your content really quickly and easily, you'll utilize that type of plugin that already exists. If your goal is to make that experience a little bit more difficult, you'll build out your own verification process. So I think that the technologies kind of exist already. It's just our awareness of them and our willingness to give up some of the data that, as you pointed out, we don't look at anyway, in order to facilitate a better interaction with the content. And that will help us with all of those bits of data. That will help us with getting more engagement with our content.
Yeah. I think it's clear that the public at large, we need to mature our opinions of how this all works in this way. Peak disinformation this year. We've heard about the Cambridge Analytica scandal and all that sort of stuff. It's kind of really sort of healthy. We need to mature through this process of understanding what is the right level of data to give away versus what gets me actual genuine benefit. Really, if anyone's interested in doing this, go and take a look at what's happening in the programmatic ad buying space. What you'll see in there is a lot of the main proponents, the thought leaders, that are people who got into it because they hate ads. And there is a much better way of delivering ads that actually inform, educate, entertain in a way that content that I want to consume, whilst actually obviously supporting promotional message. Some really interesting stuff going on there. That's people who recognise that the model we have right now is so flawed. And so that's some interesting thoughts. I would definitely go to some great podcasts on programmatic. And, well worth a listen. Helps you kind of get over that hump of where we can get to.
I'm actually going to take one more question now. And then I'll come back, afterwards we'll come back to some more questions, and we've got a couple more speakers, so we might get a broader range of answers as well. So, but I'll take them.
All right, thank you both, all of you. Just thinking about that 40% of HCPs who access information from pharmaceutical websites, I was just wondering if you could give any examples of where you've been really successful going through a pharmaceutical company, but also bringing the kind of the good data to the healthcare professionals, particularly in the UK, and also any tips for us as an agency to help get through medical legal, things like sharing papers. Just top line, but anything that has been really successful. I'll be to hear.
So I think, that's definitely connect and talk about it, because that is a very big question.
Yeah, of course.
I think some of it starts, I talked a little bit about collaboration, and I think one of the things is that we work so much in silos inside our companies, where marketeers will do their stuff in their little world, and they're very time pressured, and they've got a lot of channels that they need to support. So again, and some of it I find, depending on the brand, the focus on the channel will vary, and also how the channels are stood up. So some brands in one country might have access to retrograde email, but another brand might actually not. So it's about focusing on what they have in terms of the opportunity, in terms of those channels, but I think connecting them with the data, so coming back to the data, but also in terms of the reps, and that really rich insight you can get from them, because actually, we talk about going back to that stuff, the rep can actually lead through retrograde email, through the visits that they have, through virtual calling, they can lead physicians to that content, and it's one of the best ways to get access to the materials you want to serve. And equally, the same thing, giving the reps as a group of people, one of the things that was quite empowering is actually if you've got like an advisory board with reps where they are free to speak about what they like and what they don't like about content, my goodness they will share, because perhaps other than maybe in Japan, but they are so ready to say what customers love and what customers don't like and what they will use and what they won't. It validates the data that you will be seeing, so it kind of brings that to life. So it helps you drive and build those strategies. And then also I think it's looking at where the product is in its life cycle and investing based on that. So again, there's a lot of evidence that the role of the rep and things like the science and all that is much more critical in the first 2 years of launch. So it's investing in things because these publications will cost for the brand to be able to provision it and to provision it at a UK, global level, whatever, but focus on that actually as part of some of your launch activities, because the value you will bring will be huge. But as I said, I'm very happy to talk a bit further about it.
I think as you know, we've come from a world where, as a publisher, we used to get a phone call, can I have 1,000 copies of this paper, and I figure out we never know anything about it ever again. Into digital, where we now know intimately how many times that content has been accessed. We see utilisation rates everything from 1% up to 99%. And we never really, because we had a very sort of transactional business model, we never used to sort of care or even ask the question of what makes the difference. And I guess it was probably in the last 2 to 3 years where we've actually been challenging our customers a little bit in a friendly way, saying, can you let us know what you do around this paper? And I would say, if I was to pick one thing that seems to be the differentiator, it's how well they support the integration of that paper with the people who are going to have to utilise it. How well do they actually understand the scientific content? How well trained are those people in understanding the messages in that paper, where they are, how to call them and when to use them? That training side of it is massively underutilised. Of course, you don't get your return on investment unless you make that investment. I think is kind of pretty much what we're saying.
And then the medical piece, and I think you talked about, is partnering with the medical teams from the start. So as you start building out what you're doing, not right at the end of the process, so especially if it's digital, some of it will be understanding what you're trying to do with digital, because it's about increasing that personalisation, but also the engagement with the physician, and perhaps you need to start that dialogue a lot earlier than you might already be doing.
Okay, brilliant. So we're now going to take a slight change of direction, and I'm going to ask Richard. So if you guys want to sit back down there, and then we'll bring you back later on if there are any more questions for me. So Richard's now going to just give us a little run through what the trust track looks like if you want to access details on the coronavirus.
It's quite take me just a moment to do, so James, when do we finish on today? What time do we finish?
Richard, you've got 10 minutes, max.
We don't finish. We'll finish around 8:30 and then head down the City of York. So 8:39. And if anyone needs to leave, just sneak out the back and head held and shake.
Actually, I wanted to just show really quickly a couple of things. Just talking to the success piece is what you both mentioned is really important. You know, for a rep, it's a huge change to move from carrying a piece of paper to having to operate a digital device. And if you think about even the old days of detail aids, where they had a sort of flip book. So, on the back they'd have their cue points, on the front they'd have the slide they were talking to the doctor about, so they'd actually know what they're talking about. Nowadays they've actually learned it fully because they've only got it on the screen. So those companies that have actually engaged the people, trained them, and actually been very consistent about the way they carry the materials to market, the ones that have been most successful. And that goes for every channel. So with exhibition booths, and I've been on a lot of those, we've had literally 100% success on some booths where everybody's gone through because it's a product launch and it's a game-changing product. And we've had booths where they haven't taught anybody how to use it, they've just taken the app on the booth and surprisingly it didn't work. So I want to show you something really quick that does work very well, which is just, this is just a complete dummy of a detail aid, and the only thing we've got in here is this button where I can add a document to my collection, and I can then bring up a shopping cart, and then I can share that asset. You can see this is actually Trust Track documents working within the Viva platform. So here it's completely seamless with the normal process that the rep would be using. So the same process they've been trained to do with Viva, they'd actually just be using a reprint as a lead piece at the end of the sales call in the normal way that they'd operate. The benefit of carrying a reprint means a detail aid can take quite a long time to produce, but the data can be promoted from the day the drug's approved. So, potentially you've got a whole field force sitting on idle, not trained to use a detail aid still in production, and there's this opportunity to actually provide them all with this capability from the get-go, and then when the detail aid comes on, that's great, it's another opportunity to go and see the doctor. But they've been able to get out there with the basic science and get it in front of the doctor. And now this has come up in a templated email. It's got the T's and C's attached to it. It's got the reprint on it. I just remember to wear my glasses for presentation. Aging process. And then if I wanted to add a couple more publications to that, I can. And then I can slide to them and send it off to Dr. Clinton Ackerman. I have to be detailed in that day. So you can see for a rep, this is a trivial addition to what they would normally do, but they've been able to satisfy, that doctor with data. And I'm going to actually hand back to the other presentation because I've just lost my internet connection. I can't show the coronavirus thing. Give me a moment and I'll show you at the end.
Richard,
Oh yeah,
just a question. So what you've just shown there,
yeah.
Can you describe what challenges the solution you just shared with us actually overcomes from a compliance point of view, from a transfer of value point of view? I think that's the key bit. Certainly from my business, that's what we've seen is a real benefit of the discussion in terms of channels and approach and delivery, and the piece of kit you just demonstrated.
Thanks, Chris. I'm glad you asked. So TrustTrack allows you to license reprints from Springer centrally and make use of those in any channel. But it also allows you to create collections of reprints that can be approved for that specific activity. So if you've got an exhibition booth in Barcelona, you might be able to use different sets of content to what you might be allowed to use in Italy, what you might be allowed to use in the UK, or you might be able to use in the US. And then you've got different regulations that you have to comply with in all nations. So Canada has different regulations than the US, has different regulations than the UK. The TrustTrack platform enables you to manage all of those challenges really easily. So we can provide the Sunshine Act value of every document that's been given away. So in France, that would be, we need to declare that under the law Breton. In the US, it would be declared under the Sunshine Act. In Canada, it would be done under their equivalent. In the UK, you don't have to declare value for a reprint that's shared, but you might need to audit what you gave to who. And the other neat thing about that is it means that, let's say you've got an enthusiastic rep and he's got an iPad, and he's got iBooks on the iPad, and he goes to a well-known pirate article website, nicks a reprint, sticks it in iBooks and shows it to a doctor, and then emails it to them. So that rep's now breached every regulation. He's had an undocumented conversation. It's potentially detailed off-label. So that would be really serious, and that's possible to do with any digital device. So with TrustTrack, if that's the way that you carry your reprints, they can't use an unapproved reprint. They can only give away what's been licensed to you for them to use in activity. So off of that exhibition booth, in their sales call with the doctor, or licensed for use off of that website. So, digital is a double-edged sword, and TrustTrack makes it safe to use, basically.
I'm really glad you asked that question.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Because it's when I understood that value add that I wanted these guys along to do this, because as far as I'm aware, there's no one else that really does this. It just seamlessly delivers the stuff that we used to have as paper, but with that whole advantage. I'm guessing that's where the name comes from, right?
Yeah.
The trust bit, and then you can track it. And that's the bit that really appeals to me, is knowing what's gone where, and engagement with it, what's popular, who's using it, and then maybe top quartile, bottom quartile rep in terms of distribution.
So it's being trusted by the publishers to distribute it in a compliant way,
Okay.
and doing tracking the pharmaceutical companies.
So, I'm sorry, I just have a quick question. In terms of the open rates from those emails that come from these that are
Yep.
rep-driven, is there any industry average that you're seeing in these?
What we're using
What industry open?
Like the rep-driven email. I mean, because I think that's the other thing is that a doctor will say, yes, send it to me. How often are they actually?
So rep-triggered email is a channel, and Jan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, 40% is what you should be looking at for an email that is being sent from the rep, as opposed to probably around 10 maximum for HQ email. And then the click rate, so as you look at as a conversion,
Right, in terms of opening the
again,
download.
you're probably looking at up to 20% in terms of click-throughs and conversions there as well.
And if you,
Yeah, they're still correct, those percentages. It hovers between 38 and 41.
Yeah.
Interestingly, that's exactly the same as when we started with this back in 2013, with a very small pilot. So it stayed the same despite most of our customers adopting web-triggered email and it going out in huge volumes.
and from where your stats come from, the VAE system itself gives you open click-through, and then it can transfer to these guys to the actual download, right? So you get that joined up piece.
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to show recent internet connection. So there was one question around, so why would doctors be interested in this content? We've got a lot of detail. When sometimes it's hard for a marketeer or a layperson to kind of understand what the value of this is to a doctor. But this is an example of a reprint that I think all of us are kind of interested in at the moment, or some recently published data that all of us would be interested in. This is a publication that just came out 5 days ago, and it's about the coronavirus outbreak, which is happening in China, is now coming out across the world. And at the moment, 26 people a day are dying, 1,500 people a day are being registered as new cases. And this publication came out just looking at the first 41 that had been admitted to hospital. So I'm not going to go into it in too much detail. If you want to see the details afterwards, I can send you a copy of the reprint. But what I will say is that it's fairly alarming. The only good news, I think, is that these people were very ill, and hopefully they were the worst cases. So 15% of these people died, versus sort of 2.5% was being reported. But all of us in this room are interested in that data. And you can imagine if you're a doctor and you're treating a group of patients, and you need to know the exact detail of the particular study that's behind the particular claims in that detail aid, you want to see the source data. You don't want a piece of marketing. So, it's really important to be able to back up the claims.
Very good. Thanks very much, Richard. That's brilliant. Anybody with potential concerns about coronavirus, please bring the number on your screen at the end of the programme. Before I take any more questions, I'm now going to ask Michael and Dominic to come up and join me here. And they represent the two sides of the schism here. Michael on the other side. So Michael Smith trades GP, practice GP, some few years ago. And has been very much involved in the medical side of things since his last job was at Kieran as head of public affairs. Is that right?
International medical affairs.
Right, international medical affairs. And Dominic Knight started off as a rep, and so gives us that sort of rep on the street perspective from a few years ago again. And over the last, so he now works for us in business development, but so for the last 5 years he's been talking to brand managers and business leaders about what they want out of, what they want to see, what they need in terms of a solution for digital, for senior science. So just love to hear your different perspectives from your, if you like, your 4 different hats, from your GP hat, your rep hat, your medical hat, and your brand manager hat, as to how you see the market's changed and how you see the need now from the market. So start with your GP hat, what would you want to see there?
So I think
In terms of content.
the thing that's really changed sort of since I left clinical practice and moved into industry is the complexity of the medicines that are being brought forward, and also the complexity has been shifted from secondary care into primary care. So when I was in clinical practice, if we wanted to start someone on an ACE inhibitor, they were admitted to hospital for a several-day titration. And that's just unheard of now. And you think about the treatments that you're trying to initiate in primary care today, you've got to do an awful lot more explaining about mode of action, about the background of the disease. You've got trends in terms of personalised medicine, genomic-derived medicines, and they're being transferred out into primary care. And I think, to Simon's point about what affects that click-through rate, is really understanding what's the need of that doctor. So some of the doctors are really going to need to understand basic science, they're going to understand the completely new mode of action. I've worked on recently a rare disease medicine that is a monoclonal antibody against a hormone that wasn't even discovered when I went to medical school. So there's a whole cohort of doctors out there that you're going to have to explain. One, there's a new hormone that wasn't in your physiology textbooks when you were in medical school. Two, there's this thing called a monoclonal antibody, which people may not have heard of in primary care use before. Then you need to explain why this antibody works against that hormone and what it's doing and what the benefits are. At the same time, you're going to have to make a case for what's the value of moving from your current oral, very, very inexpensive to acquire medicine to a parenteral medicine with huge acquisition costs. You're going to have to demonstrate what the value is. So all of those pieces are going to need some sort of scientific underpinning, whether it's a mode of action video, or it's a review article, or it's going to be a link through to the NICE website to show that you've got a positive endorsement for your value. And all of those things are what you're going to need to provide in a compliant way through a variety of channels. Most of them are very content heavy and probably won't be suitable for paper distribution. And they all are interconnected. And one of the best ways, and I've worked on projects with Richard doing this before, is if you start with the SMPC and you can do click-through from your statements in the SMPC about what's your mode of action, what's your therapeutic class, what's your therapeutic indication, what are your clinical trial results. All of those things are in your SMPC, and they're all supported by scientific literature. They're just not very connected and they're not very easy to see. But actually this is a great opportunity with digital to put all that together and actually help people manage the complexity. But the other key thing, and I had a good conversation with Hans before about this, is you need to start with understanding what your customers' need is. You as a pharma company or as an agency working on their behalf have got huge amounts of data that everybody wants to push out. But actually, what do they want to know? So you need to start with what's their problem. And it may be, where does it fit in? Or how do I arrange care? How do I put together a clinic that deals with this particular problem? And you need to start with acquiring the data first, and then provide the literature that answers their question. Then I think you'll get your opening rate up, because it'll actually answer the question that they've asked, rather than what some particular person marketing strategy said, this is what we must tell, this is our key claim. That's only going to work for a certain number of customers, and you've got to personalise your marketing in an area of personalised medicine.
Very good. And Dom, with your rep hat on, how's the world changed from reps?
Blimey, so I joined pharma industry as a rookie rep in 2005. I was 15. And I think for me, it's about access and access to key customers. We thought we had it tough even then, but we could go, we could spec, we could get into surgeries, we could get into secondary care and that kind of thing. And that wasn't even leveraging a really relevant concept, it was just having a detail aid, I suppose, having a relationship. But pharma industry then was very much around just key messages. It was all around drugs information, and clinicians, ACPs, they had a need for that. So you would invariably get seen, and you would drive your brand, and you would reach those patients. And I think one of the challenges, which goes both ways with, I suppose, the advent of digital, is that ACPs are much more empowered now to be able to access content when they want, how they want. It's 24/7. And I think, for me, that has maybe impeded the value that key account managers or reps as we work could actually add, because it's not just a detail. And if you're not driving relevance, so you're not sharing content that actually adds value to the point you guys made, then how are you engendering trust, how are you building relationships, and how are you solving that market access challenge? And I worked in market access consulting for a while, and a lot of that was about building value propositions, for building them close to the customer, as opposed to having, and this is not denigrating pharma, but for example, a top-down global marketing strategy, which was marketing-led and sales-driven, because you're missing the relevance piece with key customers. I always struggled when I worked in head office. We would have very much top-down global initiatives. You would try and challenge back in a much better way, but you'd say each region is different. So how can we possibly implement a top-down strategy from our leaders in Germany that's going to resonate with an ACP in Bedfordshire? Because it just doesn't. So the flip side thing about digital, the change for it, is that now it can be more relevant, it can be more tailored, only that we have to be a bit smarter around how we align ourselves with content and which channels we use and leverage to make the conversation better and more difficult.
Very good. So, Michael, back to you again. Just so from your medical perspective, what solution should we as Tangent 90 be providing to that's going to deal with the requirements of the markets?
So I think, we've talked about it before, that we need sort of timely information that's tailored to the customers. So you need to look at the group that you're talking to. So if you're introducing a new therapy to secondary care, you may need the mode of action, you may need the pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics publications of those. But if you're actually going to introduce a new therapy into primary care, you may need to be talking to a primary care network clinical director, and he's going to want to see the guidelines, and he's going to want to see where does the publication fit in, where does the evidence fit in for your particular product within the guidelines, and it's ranking within, say, the latest NICE guidance for that therapy area. If you're talking to somebody who's actually making purchasing decisions, then they're going to want to see the cost effectiveness data. So the advantage with Trust Track is you can have the library and you can do your customer segmentation and look at it. But you can then take the metrics and look through at the click-through rates and how many people actually use it, and maybe ask for a request follow-up publication or something in more depth, rather than just assume that they look at the footnotes, that we can actually, in reality, track and look into the deeper information, and then you get a better profile.
And Dom, back to you with your kind of perspective from talking to brand managers. What is it that they're looking for? What's going to solve their problems?
So, the conversations I've had, in my experience, it's around having key content to drive the brand and support the brand. Again, shaping that conversation so it's underpinned with real-world evidence, supported. I think for me, recently I've seen more of a challenge around being able to justify ROI for brand teams and marketers. There don't seem to be budgets around when I was first in the industry right now. And I think with that there comes a lot more accountability. So if you are pitching for a budget and you base it on tactics that you deployed the year before, you can't demonstrate an ROI, then I think you're going to get very challenged. So that's again where digital plays into it quite well, because you have got granularity in analytics. So for example, if I'm a marketeer, I can say, yeah, but we launched this content at ESMO, we captured this amount of consent,
this is the follow-up to it. We've then invested in this HTTP portal. We distribute this content. And you've got much more, I suppose, of a pushback to justify marketing budgets. The other recent one was around the immediacy and the ability to change updates of the PI. Well, we won't say that. they had 7 updates to the PI over that second period. And it was just, this is a top 5 pharma company, and their internal processes were just, it sounds unkind. No, let's go.
I mean, there was a question before about medical, and I think the positive model of medical should be a co-creator, collaborator with messaging. In some farmers, it's still seen as the hurdle and the gatekeeper. But the reassuring thing about this sort of system is that you don't then fall foul of, and this has happened to me when the MHRA come and audit and they look at your websites and they realise that the SPC you've got up there, or the articles you've got there are out of date and not aligned anymore. So the thing about having a digital system that is well constructed, like this one is that if you need to update it because your SMPC's changed, then your referencing changes as well, and it's done. And you're not worried about somebody carrying an out-of-date version in their pilot bag in the back of their car.
The same with materials per se, because anything that can redact things at source and then update it. Next time the iPad goes online, there's nothing irrelevant on there. So I think there's that safety net around medical compliance as well, to make sure that every information or that you're sharing is up to date.
Yeah, in terms of reliable analytics, the story I enjoyed a little while ago was we asked customers who we'd done a congress for, we asked them how successful their congress had been the year before and what analytics they put in terms of to measure themselves against the success of the year before. And the answer to how successful was it the year before was they'd given away 67 mugs. That was the analytics that they got from it, not lists of names, consents, emails. They'd just given away 67 mugs, and that was it.
They weren't branded. No drugs next.
Good. So is there anything? So and actually, but the the fact of the way that the digital is so blooming obviously just gives you a whole bunch of stats and analytics that you don't get on paper. It's just, I mean, how obvious is all this stuff? And the other great thing, of course, that sort of plays so well to some of the other guys in the room, like James, with the AI stuff that they're doing, is all of this stuff can feed into your AI engines and just make that much more valuable, the information that the guys have got there. I mean, how obvious is this stuff? It's very obvious. Anyway, okay, stay where you are, and I'm going to, you guys move your chairs over here, and then we can open up to, because I think there'll be 1 or 2 more questions coming from them. I think there was one here, 1 or 2 here, and there's a few others that we didn't manage to catch before. So James, start with one of yours.
Oh, it's okay. You had a question over there first.
I did, yeah. I think my question was mostly for Simon, and it was a bit of a thought exercise about the fact that often one of the issues for physicians is extracting the right information from papers, and in a way papers have been in that format for so long now, and it takes a lot of skill to actually write them in that way, because I've done it for many years and actually it does take a lot of time. So is there any movement inside maybe publishing industry to try and reformat that? And you mentioned infographics, and I thought that was maybe an interesting way.
Yeah, there absolutely is, and infographics, the author interviews, turn them into podcast versions so they can be listened to in time with more convenient, are all things which are actually they're happening with delivering those kind of solutions to our customers right now. There's a little bit more, something maybe a little bit more exciting that I've seen from, as part of Springer Nature, we have a sister company in Germany called Springer Medizin.de, and they've been in the digital publishing world for 15 years. They've got huge amounts of German language content. They've developed an AI which effectively summarises the content of the article in a way which is a little bit more immediate and meaningful than simply the abstract. And they didn't get it to the point where it's kind of like all you need to do is read these bullet points and you know everything in the paper. They got it to the point though where it actually worked as a really nice like navigation system for the article itself. So it will have kind of gone in there, figured out, all right, what's the most salient content we need to call out in here? And it sits over the top of the article and the doctor can simply click through the pieces and takes them to the bullet points, highlights it. So that kind of like assisted navigation using AI, which we can obviously then roll out across thousands of papers, and we don't have to have really expensive medical writers to curate all of that content. So that, you know, there are some really, I think, exciting things happening there.
So,
sorry, Mark.
well, I was going to say that was a good answer to the question, but actually I paid for that question. But actually, it's a great question. Just to, it's not something we particularly want to talk about here, but actually, at Tangent 19 we have another product, which we call Narrator, which I've talked to one or two people about earlier, which is just a wonderful little app on your iPad that you can use to narrate posters. So just really quickly and simply upload your content to your iPad and use it to narrate posters, and it's proven wonderfully successful. Everybody we've showed it to so far. I don't know if Richard's got an iPad, he can demo as well after the event. But if anybody's interested in having a look at that, Richard might give us a show.
And I'm also trying to find an article that I worked on where we did a project where we got a group of KOLs together and did a systematic literature review, so each one was given a topic. They did their own systematic literature review, presented it to their peers, and we got the peers to vote on the quality of the evidence and did an online survey with the whole therapy area population of physicians. That was then published as a mini article, but the mini article had links back to a website which then had more in-depth video reviews and had the presentations from the advocates. So you can generate content where you have the article in the journal which gets people's attention, because people do still like to sit down and read a journal and read it, but it then had links that could take you through on the website to a lot more enhanced content from our advisory board.
Yeah, and from a physician point of view, is that helpful or just an overload or additional information?
Again, it's segmentation. So this was very much targeted against expert gastroenterologists. We were introducing a new class of therapy, and it was about positioning it. The topics that were chosen for the systematic review were all the areas of potential differentiation for alcohol versus existing therapeutic options. So from our point of view, it directed people to do a little bit more thinking about content. And it's that bit about explaining without selling to get to the point that they understand what your message is. It's not a...
The side effect is also produce a load of stakeholders and champions of the data, right?
Yeah.
So I guess on the opposite side of that, because obviously, you talk about data, you were referring to what the HEB want, which is obviously an important discussion to have. But I guess on the other side, from the marketer or the brand team's perspective, I mean, papers are very content heavy. Most of the time we're talking about open rates and click-throughs, and that's okay. But really as a brand team, when you're thinking about content or how you answer questions from physicians, looking at where people are spending their time is quite important. So apart from the obvious spaces of the kind of top bit and the conclusion, the detail that perhaps in aggregate we were looking at, is quite important. So if you use some heat maps or anything like that to guide, so we can see as marketers what people are actually spending their time on in aggregate.
Yeah, I mean we've got a lot of that on our. We run a bunch of medical education websites in our own right, and we're trying to bring doctors in to consume that content, and we spend a huge amount of time looking at that because we're spending a lot of money writing that content, and you need to know that you've spent the money well. And I think
that's on web, is it? Rather than
that's more on web, but I think certainly that is eminently doable within the frameworks where even if you're just rendering a PDF in the browser, you could probably still do that. I think the only thing I would maybe just contend a little bit with Peter's point before about this idea of data. We all absolutely want it, but I'm running this web platform, and we've got analytics coming out of our ears actually being able to figure out what you do with that that's useful is a really massive challenge, probably the biggest one of our time.
I mean, heat map's quite straightforward, it's hot, I mean, to look at that.
Heat maps are pretty good, but you know, it calls for a whole different way of thinking about what it is that you're delivering, because what do you measure is probably the more important question, and how do you figure out what success looks like? You know, we used to have this notion that, right, if we get like an average of 4 pages per visit on our website, that's great. But actually, for some of our customers, they just want them to come in and look at one piece of content, and if they go on their merry way and don't sign up for a newsletter or whatever it is, we don't care, because we've achieved that objective. So you've really got to focus on what the actual objective is in terms of thinking about what data is interesting. Just having loads of it is actually a big problem.
Good way to try and jump in. I'm really interested in this, in that there's 2 camps, right? Measure everything and figure it out at the end, versus like, let's plan what we want and then only measure that. But then what if you wanted to find out you wanted to measure something else? But we find ourselves in this thing with clients quite a lot of the time where they're measuring everything and they just like give it up because there's too much data, versus they can't make up their mind up what it is. So we end up measuring everything anyway. So I don't know what camp you fall into, whether you think there's camps or would you just measure everything and figure it out at the end?
We used to do the former, measure everything, and then we realised it's a complete waste of time because it just made our editors terrified of coming to work. And they hated it because they were just like, we just want to create great scientific content. And they say, no, you must see what engagement you have. So we've now completely flipped that on its head, and we do measure 2 buckets. One is how good are we at drawing an audience from the web, whether it's through organic search or whether it's through Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is. What is our capacity to draw an audience in with a message? When we've got them there, how do we measure our ability to engage them in very specific activities? So not blanket measures. And those 2 things together fundamentally come together to represent the strength of our brand online. As a medical education provider. So you've got to, and we started out measure everything, and it didn't work. It just terrified people. You've got to be specific.
But this is just saying, well, I've done this, am I successful? Whereas actually, it's how you act upon that. So if you look at a heat map and visit, your customers are spending all their time looking at half-life, and you think your key message is efficacy, you sort of start to switch that around, perhaps up with other data sources. So you don't need to make it overcomplicated. You just need to look at simple things to act upon.
And what you should absolutely focus on is you have a process where you are improving your capacity to create draw and create engagement. So it's about what is the needle of our ability to do this on demand. Customer turns around and says, we want to create engagement with clinicians in ophthalmology. How good are you guys at doing that? We've got a needle that we can put an engine in place that figures out how to get that level of engagement. So it's about capacity, not the actual numbers themselves just fuel that iterative process. It's closed loop. It's exactly what Viva is here to actually support in terms of that level of measuring engagement, doing something useful with it, build a process. The numbers, the data is absolutely useless without it.
I think that what you talked about in terms of context is critical, because that top of the funnel piece you talked about in terms of awareness, you're talking about huge numbers, you're talking about huge ability to bring people into your ecosystem. How you optimize that, there's a whole bunch of data points you're utilizing to optimize that awareness, and then similarly, consideration phase in the marketing funnel, there's loads of stuff you can do to optimize engagement, but within that context, and what we're talking about with publications as a link off the back of content, you're at that absolute bottom of the funnel. So your value and your return from looking at all the data to optimize that very bottom part of the funnel is going to be much lower than optimizing the top end of the funnel, and how you create reach with 90% of your target audience utilizing a range of channels is probably going to deliver you higher ROI than how you optimize the delivery of the clinical paper if the doctor wants to see it, if they've had a rep call, if you've managed to engage them at that point. So I think you've just got to balance those things against the size of your team, your priorities, and where you're going to deliver most value. But the data's going to be there to support the decisions you want to make.
Yeah, but I think I was thinking about, so someone's looking, your audience is looking at certain content, perhaps it's different, and then that would influence your other channels. So, your field teams, how you get them to prioritise messages, where are the objection handlers. So clearly, we're saying this about a brand, but they're spending lots of detail on that part. So actually, that means that people doubt what we're saying. So then you train your sales guys to handle that objection more thoroughly. So that, so it isn't about just giving people at the paper, that should influence the other channels, because you're getting quite in-depth information.
James, you seeded that. You seeded that statement. That's got your fingerprints all over it.
It's the value of market insights to inform your marketing campaign beyond the actual current activity. So we talk about it in detail age reps, but if you're looking at identifying a patient, the treatment goals you're trying to achieve with that patient, how well the doctor's achieving it, that will inform that call with that rep, which is kind of what we talk about when we draw people into a website. In addition, Terry as the marketeer will get that insight. So what regional educational campaigns does he run in real life? Well, the one was on the treatment goals least achieved across the UK or across the Birmingham, wherever we're looking at. So there's a difference between how well is this are we doing with this versus what else can this tell us that the rest of our campaigns and marketing. I think we're talking about those two separate things.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think personalisation's been mentioned quite a few times, and that email was the first time that I've seen that functionality to be able to say drag and drop publication depending on which one. And I don't know whether this is a trust rack or a Viva question, but in terms of is there potentially the functionality there to be like, okay, you want maybe speaking to the doctor on an MOA video and to be able to drag in that MOA video, or you're seeing a commissioner and you're in secondary care and you want what's our system redesign going to look like, or if you're looking at maybe they don't want the paper but they want a key opinion leader giving a podcast about that. Is there the functionality to go, okay, great, based on that, let's personalise that and give them basically back what they want?
So, yes. And you know, a lot of that content, like an MOA, might be stored in Vault because it's content you've made. And so you can just create a normal fragment and distribute that. But if it's a piece of content that you've licensed, so you've licensed a video in from a medical institution, or you've licensed a reprint from a publisher, or you've cleared a rights on a poster with a society, then all of that content, the trust track will be managed. But obviously, we can carry any digital asset. We've got to kind of work with your standard working practices. So if you're using a closed loop marketing platform, probably certain amount of keeping that.
So yeah, the Viva system already does that. I think what these guys do add in the bit that you can't do in Viva, with the copyright stuff. But what you're doing further with Viva is depending on what you've shown that doctor in that session, you can make recommendations about what fragments to add, or you can add them straight from above in the detail session. So that's already in place. When I saw what you do here, like why isn't everyone using this? I don't understand. I don't understand because it's a missing part of the digital ecosystem that this will fill. I haven't seen any other solution.
And the nice thing is, from a rec perspective, it's no different from that. So while Trust Track's in there, behind the scenes, their use of the tool is exactly the same. So from there, and one of the things that I found, and it's amazed me, and this has not just been like in the UK, it's been in other countries where they've gone in and they're not using fragments, so the templates have such a short shelf life. And they're also not relying on the fact that reps know their customers. They're going to know what content the customer wants to see, either as we were just saying through the detail aid itself or as post-call. So having these fragments is just such a powerful way to leverage that combination of the rep's relationship with the doctor and also ensure the longevity of the content, so that you're not worrying about having relevant rep-triggered emails always available for your reps to use as well.
And if you tie that in with a My Insights dashboard, so the reps can see. So I'm super passionate about dashboards here, right? So you encourage good behaviour from reps, right? Which is, do I need to send this clinical trial, etc. You can get this virtual cycle where you can show that if you take the time to send these emails, it's pretty straightforward. You can see if the doctor's opened the email, if they click through, and then you can feed back in the API from the Trust Track to show what's being downloaded. So you do a nice dashboard, how many doctors in my territory have I sent an email to, how many have opened it, and you start to get that, I think I'm making a difference. But also when you go and see that doctor the next time, if they haven't opened the email, then you can maybe raise that with them, or you can resend it. It's that bringing the information back to the rep so that they get encouraged to do that behaviour. One of the issues you see is a lot of reps not even bothering to open up their detail aids to a doctor, they'll just open up without opening to a doctor. So you lose those analytics. You can use a dashboard to reinforce that value, because data is valuable to them. They can do a better job with better data, not just marketing.
I think that's kind of the heart and minds piece as well. So with hearts and minds, if you get the rep to invest or account to invest and see the value while they're doing it, then it becomes self-fulfilling, because then obviously it drives their engagement basic fees, it then drives certain drugs which patients
bonuses.
And future-proofs their role, because they're going to add a lot more value. So again, that combined with things like suggestions as well.
Yeah.
You've then got a sweet spot, because you're then actually saying, send this clinical paper, you haven't visited X, Y, Z in such time. You know, it gives them all the tools they need to execute without all the legwork that they were having to do from an account management perspective.
And from a Viva perspective, just to respond to your point, we have no plans to replicate the functionality that is in Trusttrack. So it's truly the only solution out there that does that. Some of you may have attended the summit where we may have confused a few people by not making very explicit that that was Trusttrack functionality. So Ben, it stands corrected now, right?
Thank you. Can I ask a question about the medical versus commercial split with this product? So you've got your own analytics, right? And you've got your own customer base. Who's taking it up? Is it brand teams or is it medical teams? What's the sort of split in terms of the utilisation of customer?
I mean, it's kind of 50-50 actually. When we engage with medical teams, we have to engage, with brand teams, we have to engage with medical anyway to make sure that they clear the content that's going to be made available for brand collections. And also they ought to have a hand in helping to choose the content that's sort of most useful. And when we're working on exhibition booths, which is kind of my expertise, then quite often we're satisfied by both sides of the booth. So we'll have commercial iPads out there with loaded commercial reprints, commercial content, and we'll have medical iPads out there which are loaded up with a whole range of content.
Which was field medical here?
Sorry?
I don't know where you get that field medical. Yeah.
So for field medical is more about immediacy of the shop. But they might still be responding to a medical information query, but that might be relevant to an article they've actually got on their iPad. So we've actually integrated with the medical information system so that we can capture a query, add the article to that query, raise it into the medical information system and send it immediately, send that response immediately. So we haven't built that functionality out for certain companies.
Yeah, because the thing about the medical piece is that you can reactively respond and draw a much greater pool of data, and you may be able to provide a substantiation to the sort of data that might be in section 5.1 of your SFPC that you're not going to be putting up there in promotional claims, but you may get questions about, or you may get supplementary questions. Is there any information about quality of life or something? You may have the data to support it, but you can provide in response to a question. And there are a list of frequently asked questions and predictable questions that you can prepare for an exhibition and bring the teams to be able to deal with them.
I'm also at work also for Gilead, not UK office, but in the region. You triggered my thoughts in terms of why aren't you using it? I want to play that back because this audience, more or less, we're preaching to the converted. What is the problem?
You're asking me why you think I think it's exposure. You mean why isn't everyone using this?
I mean, no. I'm quite sure because I come into Gilead every year now, and I see heavily underuse of what Viva can offer. Good. We see opportunities. I've worked with Richard in GSK as well, and it didn't really took off. What's your view of the broader perspective?
I wanted you guys to be able to answer that question to us. You tell, like.
I mean, I've sat next to a marketing colleague. We've been planning a congress, and I've been saying, yeah, well, we need to have the reprints available. Let me get you this system to demo it, and it was demoed, and it was how much cheaper?
£20,000.
£20,000 cheaper. And you went
£90,000.
Nah, I'll go for the paper reprints. And I think it was because maybe it's just more tangible, maybe it's more familiar, and it was something that you could fill up the shelves with on the booth. What was their budget?
I think in that specific case, I mean, I felt it was fire and forget. It was just make a purchase of those boxes of paper, send them out to the regions, pay the export duty, done. You know, no idea what that then happened to. Yeah.
No.
Most do.
Well, interestingly, actually, if you offer doctors a choice of paper or digital, I mean, actually in front of them, and you advertise the fact that digital is available, they'll universally select digital. And the other thing is that they're not interested in being selective, you know, really, because actually when they're, you know, they're not going to pick this paper over that paper. They want to have your data, you know, the data that sits behind your claims. And then when you have new data, they want to see that. And when you have a supporting poster, they want to see that. You know, and I mean, we've seen the distribution when we've been at standalone meetings and things, we've been able to measure it well, when we measured it across a booth and actually zoned things, that, you know, 100% of the doctors who collect content collect the new content, and that sort of tails down to sort of content that's 6 months old, maybe. Well, last time we measured 67% of doctors on one particular booth were collecting that content out of the pool of doctors that were collecting. You know, if it drops out to sort of 2 years and beyond, then you're really talking about educating junior doctors who sort of, or specialist registrars or whatever, are coming into the therapy area or sort of, you know, early in their educational journey. So maybe sort of tails off to sort of 10% of doctors would be interested in older content. And we have mechanisms to actually support that as well, the long tail. So, you know, we talk about efficiencies as well. That, you know, one of our big successes at GSK was with ViiV. And it wasn't just actually providing this capability in every country, but it was also that we saved them $1 million in the first 6 months of using the platform, because they weren't having to overorder all of it.
So you not use that as a case study then?
We did. So really good idea.
Yeah, that's a really important. I think the case study bit, but also to get me up by what ViiV's had a great deal of success with people through emails is really pushing the open rates. We talked about that earlier when you're up to 66%, open rates 40% click through versus 3% from head office and stuff. So there's that proving the evidence and of course, you know, and getting it out and in front of people. But I don't know.
Yeah, so
and using it in cases where getting consent is difficult.
Oh, that was my next question.
Well, there you go. You didn't pay me for that.
I just like to say something sort of semi-controversial about that. The whole digital ecosystem, all of the components, and the reason why adoption has been slow. And I think it's fundamentally because it's failed to demonstrate improvement in sales.
Yeah. The open rate isn't an increase in prescription. Is what we say, basically.
Absolutely, and the format with which you have your publications, I think is a really good point about efficiency and saving money in terms of publication. But the format makes no difference to your end sale. Similarly, the format in which you deliver your sales aid, as long as you're delivering it effectively. If people delivered sales aid effectively when they were paper, you're just starting to get to a point with ViiV and other platforms where the analytic capability can inform salespeople to improve the effectiveness of their call. So now you're just getting to a point where it may impact on sales, but it hasn't done previously up until now, really. The same with all of the digital channels. It's only now that we're able to demonstrate the commercial impact of utilising all of the digital channels that HCPs are currently on and how you can create mass awareness. It's only now we're demonstrating the sales impact. So that for me is why it's only in the last few years you can actually show is an increase in terms of revenue, and that suddenly motivates people pretty quick as soon as you do that.
That demonstration has been around for a long time, even before Viva, where it was done on CLM specifically, where the comparison was done. The problem is always it's time consuming and more complex to do. You do A/B testing, that's great, but it's painful to do, right? We're now, and I agree with you, we're now at a point where on statistical analysis, we can do this more on a continuous basis.
Yeah.
And so the measurement becomes easier. But it has been happening in the past.
And I should point, it's definitely not a criticism of the channels or platforms like Google, which now I think are absolutely there and ready. I mean, I come from a computer science background, so I love all of the digital components in the channels. I think it's been agencies, it's been the providers who have just failed to make that connection into the sales side. So it's not
Yeah, absolutely.
it's not a criticism of what we're all doing. I spent the last 14 years doing all of those things. So I spent the last 14 years failing to demonstrate an impact on sales. Actually, I'd say the last 13. The last year.
Yeah, no, well, that's very good. Thank you very much for that insight there. And I mean, you know, really those are the two big questions that I've come here for, to get the answer for today. And so I'm getting a little bit of insight into that. But the two big questions is, you know, why aren't people buying more digital science from publishers? You know, what is it they're doing that makes it unappealing, or why is that not happening? And, you know, to some extent you answered that. And why hasn't everybody got Trust Track, which is the other big question that puzzles me religiously. And of course, actually, and part of that is that the maximum benefit you get from having a system like Trust Track is when it's pervasive across your whole organisation, because it's a multi-channel thing. You know, so we've managed to sell it into GSKs in particular brands and particular congresses. But once it becomes, you know, the massive benefit of a system like this is when it can deal with all your multi-language, multi-jurisdictional problems and multi-jurisdictional MOR issues. When it can make you the savings on buying your content centrally rather than buying it in ones and 200s around the world. It's that you actually start making lots of savings. So it is just getting it better and better. But as I said, we're making progress. And are there any other questions? One more question.
Yeah, just obviously we've heard a little bit about the facility within the consent to receive, which is hugely important in terms of audience. I just wondered if there were any, for the panel, if there were any good examples of driving consent to receive through perhaps HCP portals or Congress, given that it is such a valuable
I mean, I don't know how many people here want to answer that one here, but I can say that Trust Track is all about generating consents. That's what it's about. It's providing good content which people want to see and generating consent. And I sometimes find myself using a strange selection of words which goes, do you know, GDPR has been quite good for our business, and you don't hear a lot of people say that. But actually for us, the compliance issue absolutely plays for what we're doing with Trust Track. It really does. And it is generating those consents and tracking that makes Trust Track happen.
Sorry, answer an official panel member.
Yeah, go.
The thing is that multi-channel is ever evolving. There's, you know, just countless digital channels out there, and none of them solve the problem that Trust Track solves, which is why we just made ourselves as compatible as we can be with everybody. So then, if you want to distribute a reprint, we're compatible with any channel. We're also compatible with you changing your technology to the channel. So if you change your web content management system, you move from a site called Adobe, Experience Manager or back again, there's no problem because all of your licensed content is sitting in a different platform. It's just exposed out. So it's almost a question of actually have we covered all of our channels. So if you look at congresses, there are Congress apps, but none of those support sharing of reprints. Well, one of them does, because we recently enabled Spotlight to do it. But, it's just a matter of making sure that this content is actually available in the channels that we want to service doctors in, or they want to receive content in.
In summary to the question.
Absolutely. We had an example of a customer who they were using the rep channel simply just to get a tick in the box. It was the door opener face to get the doctors, maybe the arms twisted behind the backs or whatever, to say, yeah, I consent to receive communications, and that then opened up to the web portal and to the other avenues. And I think that, to go back to that point from before about, why is this adoption not necessarily being seen, obviously we are part of a massively risk-averse industry, and I think people are fairly naturally risk-averse, and you have to be able to take risks, including having to spend more money to potentially get less in the beginning. And I think the big fear factor is that digital will embarrass you, because it will make you have to understand what you are really delivering as a business as opposed to what you thought you were delivering. It will kind of shine a light on what it is that you actually do. And a lot of people are actually afraid of understanding what that is. And so you have to really be able to take on the fear factor of doing something where you don't know what you're doing, because you will learn something and come out the other side. But that's risky, and people like to tick boxes and do the things they've always done. So
What's the phrase that Pharma use data like a drug use of madness? For support, not for illumination.
I thought you were going to say something dog related.
If I make one quick recommendation, there is a book called Competing Against Luck, which you may have come across by a guy called Clay Christensen from Harvard Business School. And he goes into great depth. He's done YouTube videos on where does innovation come from, and it is literally about the process that these businesses go through when they sort of hit digital, made them go, oh my God, we don't actually sell what we thought we sold. And the process that you can actually go to do that in a systematic, objective way to learn what do you actually do as a business. It's a great book, I would definitely recommend.
Very good. I'm happy to.
Sort of digging over you,
Yeah.
so I'm suggesting.
That's about time. That's about time. So thank you very much all for contributing, helping me answer my unanswered questions, and for being here. And particularly, we all thank these guys here for.